Grandma's joining us today because today is her 92nd birthday. 92 years.
I'm supposed to be old.
Yeah,
That's
she's
fantastic.
supposed to be old. Isn't that so fun? So I kind of think of like with all the stuff that many of the people are asking us and the process that people are going through, questions they have. Grandma has lived through the Depression.
Yep.
The Cold War.
Yeah.
Yeah, the loss of family, the growth of friends. So there's got to be some wisdom after 92 years that Grandma can give all of us out there in this process. So Grandma, come on, give us those 92 years of words of wisdom you can leave with our group here today.
I just think God is good all the time. We need to lean on the Lord for everything we need. Is that good?
That's pretty good.
Right.
God is good and lean on him. I agree with you.
Okay. Yes.
The song that's going through our head today is that Steve Miller song, Dance, 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 because the lyrics are, my grandma, she's 92. She keeps on dancing and she'll sing some too, right? So Grandma's going to go dance, dance, dance for us a little bit later today. But I just want to say I love you. Happy birthday.
Nom, 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 nom. Grandma kisses. I love you too. You got a grandma?
Joel.
I do not have any surviving grandmas. No, unfortunately. But my mom, I have my mom, and she is the granddaughter to my daughter. So yes, the grandmother vibe is strong in my family.
Yeah, good. I hope she grows to be old and vigorous like me.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you. I love you.
Well, happy birthday, and thanks for those well wishes. I want to welcome everyone to another live stream in our daily briefing today. I'm Joel, and Tim, of course, has already said hello, and we are Rev Thinkers, which means we exist to help you creative entrepreneurs thrive in business and life and career. And today, we're going to be diving into, I think, sort of taking some of what we've been talking about and starting to convert it, meaning asking this question: what are the lessons that we are learning, that we have been learning, and how do we lock them in? So, Tim, I'm excited to dive into this topic.
Yeah, you know, we just came out of the Confab group that you do, and it's such a great kind of dynamic group of people. They're processing at many different levels of business ownership, but really kind of all living together that idea and those dreams of what it means to be an entrepreneur, to take the risk, to take on the responsibility, and to get the reward from it. And some of that really doesn't always play out the way we want to, does it? Especially like this crisis has brought some of that to the foreground of, wait, why am I really doing this? Being an employee might just be easier at this point. So those life lessons we've lived and played out many, many times, we want to try to capture those and bring them forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is Wednesday, April the 15th. I should mention that because it's interesting how normally you business owners would be processing a little thing called taxes and IRS deadlines. And some of us are, of course, processing those things now. But this is a different year and it's a different time. So we want to try and take some of the things that we've been learning and collapse them down and capture them and say, okay, how do we move forward? What do we keep doing, and how do we keep doing them, and so that we're doing the right things, no matter what, in good times and in bad. Tim, if you don't mind, I was going to share the little nugget. So Shauna Schultz, I don't know if Shauna, if you're here today with us, she was in Confab this morning as we were going through this concept called the Factors Method and just getting into the introduction of, okay, how do we manage our creative firms in a better way? And after we got through doing the overview, she shared this thought, and I thought, this kind of nails it, and I know exactly how this feels. She said, thank you for this. It's what I've been looking for right now and didn't know it. and I thought, yeah, I know that feeling where when I was running my business, for 20 years, I ran Impossible Pictures and it was successful and it made a lot of money and it was great. But when I always kind of had this nagging sense of, I feel like I'm just making this up as I go. And when I went through a bad season, like I went through the 08, 09 recession, as I came out of it, it was like, damn, I knew there were things I wasn't doing right or properly, efficiently, I don't know. And then that global crisis revealed where I was weak, where I was unprepared, where I was being reactive. And then I remember meeting you, of course, years later, and you started sharing some of the, what I would call counterintuitive ways of running your creative firm. And you might remember me saying, why didn't I meet you 10 years ago, damn you, Tim Thompson?
Yeah, but counterintuitive might be what's there. It's like the not the commonly practiced ways of doing things. And I think there are many reasons why we fall into certain practices. One of my theories in talking about financials is that we follow the practice of the P&L report. Just the way the P&L report is structured and flows, we almost make decisions with that as the format or the idea of where the money is supposed to flow. And to get to the other side of it and start taking control over certain decisions is one of our goals at RevThink. I like to joke that I think backwards sometimes, but the idea is to be able to not see the pizza for the slices, but see the pizza for the layers and recognize all the possibilities you can put on ingredients that are there and not just look at it in the most basic form. Yeah. Yesterday we used the term, becoming practiced and intentional instead of improvised and lucky. And really that's the thought of being actively thinking, actively processing, and actively pursuing your long-term goals.
Yeah, so I'm gonna just put it out there to everyone that's here. There's about 25 folks or so here. I would really love to hear, and Tim as well, what do you feel like maybe is a lesson that you've learned, that you are learning right now? And then let's see if we can process together, what does it look like to lock that in so that going forward, you don't have to relearn it? Because I think the only thing worse than having to learn a tough lesson is having to learn it twice, right?
Yeah.
So drop your comment, your question here in the chat, and we'll process this together. Tim, maybe to provide some thought starters for people, it would be good for us to put out there what you and I would call some common myths, right? These are some of the areas where I think these are traps that owners fall into. And this is not going to be judgmental at all, because I'll just confess that I believed all these myths too in the years of running my business, and have, shall we say, had to deal with the consequences of not breaking free of the conventional wisdom a little sooner. But where do you think we should start?
Yeah, that's great. Well, some of it too, like Marcel isn't with us, so we need you business owners to kind of throw some items out there in the chat, and good ones we'll bring forward too if you want to be part of the conversation. But here's the big picture item that I think of, Joel. Most of us business owners don't practice the idea or practice the concept or the belief that we deserve it first. So we often think that other people deserve it first. And the easiest example of that is when you're doing a project, you might say to yourself, we have to deliver even if I can't make a profit.
Right, or no matter what. No matter what happens, we have to deliver at all costs. And that's actually a pretty good word, at all costs, right?
Yeah, and we feel like this obligation to deliver, obligation to pay out those freelancers, obligation to make sure our staff gets paid, and I'll take it at the end. I'll hopefully there's more at the end. So that's the big dream of, well, I'll control costs and have more profit, but when not, I'll give up all the profits. And that entitlement myth really is one of the first most basic thoughts that we have.
Yeah, and let me also add maybe a nuance there, because if you're an owner and you're hearing that and you're thinking, okay, sure, I want my jobs to be profitable, right? That's all well and good. I think maybe the takeaway that I would share, Tim, you should maybe help me find the words for this. It's more the idea that if you're not controlling those direct costs, those indirect costs, and controlling your margin, which does mean profit shows up. But if you're not controlling those things, then you're almost making decisions by reaction or by default. And you're just going through the motions, and you end up at the end of the project saying, well, I guess we didn't make money. I guess I can't take care of myself or my business like I'd like to, but maybe it'll be better next time.
Right,
and then we do the same thing over and over again, right?
Yeah, you're depending on improvisation and luck. Hey,
Yes.
I'll say yes, and then I'll do what I do. I'll work my magic, and I'll kind of make all those decisions as we go along. And at the end, I hope I'm lucky enough to have something left over. Where really you can make some proactive decisions before you take on that project. Imagine taking the profit out first, putting that aside in a checking account, and then making sure you're paid and your overhead is covered first, and then use the subjective nature of a project to kind of shoehorn those deliverables into what's left of the budget. And I think most of us don't recognize that subjective nature as a mechanism we practice all the time. And instead of doing it proactively and saying, I know I can get this project delivered within what's left over after I take out the profit and take out the indirect costs, we say, okay, I'll do the best I can to deliver, and then I hope my indirect costs and my profit are what's remaining. So just flipping that backwards, taking it out first, and then working with your production team, your creative team, and managing your clients' expectations to deliver the project within their limits.
So let me cruise through a few of the comments here, because there's some good ones, and then we'll pick one or two that we might want to drag somebody into it or expand on it. But I love this. Richard was saying one big lesson is to do nothing. For 2 weeks, we let the industry settle and renormalize. And just last week did I start reaching out to A, friends, B, friends next, and C, cold calls maybe in May. So that's interesting. Also, George says this, moving to new markets can't drop older markets, meaning if the world drops out and you're in between markets, like now, it's trouble. And then Daniel has said, I love this one, probably my favorite, what being proactive versus reactive means practically. Like, yeah, because that would be my sort of question is, I think it's easy for us to say, don't be reactive, be proactive. But if I can be maybe our audience here, Tim, I would say, yeah, great. No kidding, Professor. How do I actually do that?
Sure. What's interesting to me is we actually practice that all the time when we take on a project. So at the very beginning of a project, when we accept it, the first thing we do is we create the concept. We create storyboards or ideas. We pitch it somehow to get that client to engage with that idea. Then we make a schedule and a budget. We come to an agreement, we make a contract, and then we act out that project. Well, all that pre-planning and pre-visualizing and understanding and negotiating is being proactive. I want to come to a terms of understanding of what it's going to take to get something done before I go out and do it. And some of us do it so well that we can, after we've done that initial part, we can hand that off to a freelance producer. So that's not even a person that works full time for you, a freelance person, and say, follow this roadmap and you will be successful. Stay within those parameters and tell me the truth when I go off and I'll fix it. All of that is a very proactive way of getting a project done. Let's just take those same ideas, practices, and principles and put that into our business. Let's think about it ahead of time. Let's roadmap it out. Let's have an understanding of what the long-term needs are. And then let's make those decisions methodically, step by step, piece by piece. The work that we do is often getting it down to take the big picture and be able to make those decisions on a project by project basis, knowing that the long-term is covered and the short-term project needs are also covered. That's the practical tipping point that we work with our clients, but that's the big picture concept we want to go for.
Well, I love that idea of how could you possibly treat your business the way you treat projects? View your business like a project. How would you run it as if it was a project? I'm wondering, do we have a sample factors report that might be kind of interesting just to help put the concept into some sort of practical terms? Like, what would it look like to see something in black and white that gives me a sense of, oh, what are all the areas that I manage and how would I view them in a way where I can start being proactive and not just looking at a P&L from last month or last year and saying, oh crap, where did things go wrong? But start turning that to the future and saying, how do I create this future?
Yeah, so Theo just said this really great thing. He says, it seems like you're investing in what you want to do first and then building around its execution.
Oh, that's so good.
Exactly it.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yep.
Theo learned something he didn't. What was Shauna's quote? I learned something I didn't know I needed, or whatever that is.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's exactly the idea. Here's the way I say it is: the business should work for you, not you work for the business. So if you were an investor in a business, what are your expectations to get a return? And then you go into business to get that return. Then the business kind of works its way through to make sure we're getting to the other side of it. And we read, story after story in the news, and there's magazines dedicated to people that are going public. How did they get there? Well, they got there because when they started their business, they knew with investors they're going to build something so they can take the company public. That's from the first day they knew that was a path. I want our creative business owners to recognize what they want out of their business, have a long-term career goals, long-term life goals, and then use the business success to achieve those goals. That's the overall practice and principle here. So yeah, Joe, we do use a thing called the factors report to make that happen. But that's the concept we're trying to get business owners to proactively make those long-term decisions.
Yeah, and I put it this way. I think of it in terms of how, as a business, how can you run, or I run my business so that I have more control? How can I regain control, like I had in the old days when it was small and it was just me and one other person? How do I get more freedom? Meaning, can I delegate and trust that the business is going to run, and ultimately, is it going to fulfill the goals, the plans that I have? Somewhat automatically. I mean, I know that's oversimplifying things, but can I empower my team, give them all the responsibility, but also all the authority to make it happen? And how would I do that?
I'm going to share. I'm going to share my screen real quick. I'll show people it's basically a template that we use, or a sample template we use for the factors method here. It's called Factors Influencing Profitability. And I like that title because it gets down to the idea of what this report is about. It's the decisions that we make, or the factors we make, that influence our profits. And this is about profits, but we make these decisions all over our company for creative reasons and production reasons and career reasons. But finance is like a simple report that we have that we could look at. And we have our clients break down the costs we just use a P&L, but break down these costs ahead of time. And we just kind of have the same information they have on their P&L. We just have reshuffled it into two major categories: direct costs, or costs directly related to projects, and indirect costs, which is the costs that are not related to projects.
I was going to say, this might look similar to a P&L, and it's basically the same information, but it's structured or ordered in a way where we can see direct costs and indirect costs rather than like a traditional cost of goods sold or cost of services versus overheads.
Yeah.
Because I guess, Tim, the real idea being is, let's identify where are the items where we have more control and more flexibility versus those that we don't.
Yeah, I was going to, there's a better one I have if you just give me a second. I have a worksheet that kind of makes it in a more simple form that I can kind of show the overall idea of what we're looking for in those decision points. Because our opportunity really here is to make certain decisions along the way so that you know ahead of time what you're getting into when you start a project, and then you can allocate those decisions or those projects out there, or I'm sorry, those decisions for the projects out there to a producer. And then really, as a business owner, let go and trust that producer to stay within the guidelines of a project. Here, Joe, this was much easier than that.
Yeah, I've got a PDF I can share. Do you want me to post that?
Well, I'll just show this in the most basic form. So, and then we can move on from this. But the direct costs really are items related directly to projects. So that'd be even if your staff, you would have your staff, your freelancers, any kind of out-of-pocket costs, and even commission is part of a direct cost, right? Because if there wasn't a project, you wouldn't have to pay commission. And you get a first item of where that money goes. And then your indirect items are really your overhead items, or the items not related to projects. What I want to do is I want to do this thing I call the splits, which is take the money away from the project from the beginning. So in this sample data here, we know that our indirect costs are about 58% of every dollar we receive as a company. So therefore, when I start a project, I take that 58% away. This sample data is big. It's usually around 45 to 50% is what we would extract, most companies would extract. But we want to pull that money off the project and leave the remaining amount, or the 41% of every dollar, on the project so the producers can produce within those parameters. And then we let them negotiate their own deals and work with real costs when they're working with those numbers as well. I kind of like to point out that when you inflate numbers for your cost controlling or cost reporting of a project, you actually are reporting false data, and everyone kind of knows it. So the decision making becomes soft. I like to have hard core information out there when making those decisions.
So right. So is that where some people here might do that, where they have an artist that's on staff, but they say, well, we're going to bill that person out at $150 an hour, and that includes the person's cost and a bunch of overheads and some markup and some margin and some fudge factor. And then when that person is working on a project and you ask your producer, well, how are we doing? The person would say, well, I think we're doing okay, but it's really fuzzy and really soft.
Yeah, and you want to, as a decision maker, a global decision maker for your business, be able to hand over all the responsibility and all of the authority to those producers. You don't want to be able to say like, well, here's a budget, but run everything by me before you make a decision. That's a horrible way to run a business. It's micromanaging. You can never scale, and you're not using that person's skill, which producers are really good at staying within budget. So you say, you know what, here's the amount you can spend, negotiate with your friends, get these freelancers on board, work the schedule, work with the client to make sure it all fits. And then let that person do what they do best, produce a project.
Yeah, this is cool. Nico here, I'm guessing that's Fetty. If that's you, Fetty, say howdy. He sent us this comment. We knew about COVID back in January, and one of the things we did was restructure how we cost a project and generate a new pricing scheme to be able to get proper data on how much each project covers an artist, office admin, overhead, et cetera, in terms of percentages. And my guess is that's part of the process that he went through when we were in Jumpstart, and we walked those people through this factors method. But yeah, I will say this, maybe one lesson I would want everyone to lock in is, it's this idea, Tim, of if you can actually work with real numbers, real costs, then you're really empowering your team to just give you the truth. Because I don't want the fluffy answer from a producer if a project is going sideways. It's like, well, I'm not sure. I want to be able to know I've given you all the responsibility and all the authority, and if you stay within these guardrails, my business is moving forward and fulfilling the needs for the team, for the business, but also for my life and my career.
So I'll maybe bring up another myth too, because this is where that you hear the other side of the argument when it comes to something like the factors method. I feel that a lot of creative business owners want to tell me, yeah, but I'm not doing it for the profits. I'm doing it for the creative output. Profit isn't the number one priority. And I really do get the intention of that. So here's that myth of like, yeah, but I'm getting what I want to out of my business because I have the creative freedom to do what I want. Or I get all the creative benefits of growing my business and the reputation. But what we all really know is that creative freedom doesn't really play out the way we thought when we started our business. Your clients give you all the freedom you want to, as long as you deliver exactly what they wanted to when they gave you the money, right? So really that idea of exploring or growing or having a long-term creative career because of, your constant creative work really doesn't play itself out unless you're a viable business to begin with. So it doesn't have to be your number one priority for profit, but being viable means protecting some of that long-term reputation, long-term opportunity, and long-term gain. because this is where you would capture that, by the way. If you want creative freedom, you have to capture that within your own business. You have to understand what creative freedom looks like and be able to put practices into place so that you can be free. If you want to have, oh yeah, go ahead.
I'll just share this little gem because I want to dispel this other myth that you hinted at, Tim, and that is, well, if I just keep doing this and I make my clients happy, I'll get more projects, and obviously that will lead to more sales, and sales is going to solve all my problems. Because if we just make enough money, everything will work. And I think the breakthrough or the insight is, as an owner, you have all the control, no matter what size your company is. And you can run things in such a way that you have the control and the freedom. If you're $1 million a year business, or if you're a $4 million a year, or if you're a $20 million a year, but just growing and getting more sales, it actually just scales the problem right along with it. And that's when things get dicey, right? I mean, I unfortunately learned that lesson the hard way myself. Was growing impossible to be $5 million a year. Well, when the tough times came and I had to transition and wind down that business, I had not taken care of things, and I was the one left holding the bag. So, how did that work for me?
Yeah. And Joel, how many conversations do we have with people when we first start? One of their goals is to sell their business. What they realize is over time that the projects that they're doing, the margins get smaller. There seems to be different parameters than what they first understood. It takes more and more investment to keep the project going. To keep the company going. And employees are hard to manage. That first group of people that you worked with, it was like a family, they have long gone, and now people just want day rates, and you want to kind of move that machine forward. And the question is like, how do I finally do it? How do I get to a place that this company becomes an asset that's worth selling? And that's that last myth that I want to bring up, is that idea of like, this thing that you have has to become an asset instead of a liability. And if you're going to sell your business and you haven't put things into practice and work into practice so that it can self-manage, then when you get bought out, you really just have a different type of employment contract. And Joel knows that firsthand.
You had to bring that up, didn't you? No, it's true. It's true. And that's another myth, right? That someday I'm going to sell my business. What that usually looks like is it's an earnout, which is really just a guaranteed paycheck. It looks like a big check, but it's really just work here for 3 or 5 years for me, the new owner, and I'll just guarantee you, some sort of a big check that really is just a salary that plays out over a number of years. And that's generally a bad way to end. That's not a good.
So why would they buy you? Why would a company purchase you if they're not just buying your skill? And if you want to get out of the way, what they have to buy is the system and the routines that you have behind the scenes that can make a profit no matter what. That's a worthwhile investment for a company to come in, or a person to come in and buy your business, is because even if you're out of the way, there is a built-in layer of systems and routines that get results no matter what. And that practice, or that margin that you gain on a project by project and year by year basis, is a worthwhile investment to get a return from it. So that's converting to an asset. And if you don't want to be in the most common practice is that employment contract that comes after an earnout or an earnout period after a buyout, then you're going to have to do something now to get to the other side of it.
Yep. Something now sounds like it's a delayed gratification concept, where we're not just doing what's right in front of us. It's saying, hey, 3 years, 5 years down the road, I do desire this self-managed creative firm thing. Like, yeah, I want to work on my company, but not necessarily in my business. I don't want a job. I want this freedom called, hey, I get to work on this project because I'm excited about this. I have something to contribute creatively. But yeah, I want everyone to have a sense of what's possible, that creating the right systems and routines will empower their teams to go and effectively run the company. I mean, that's quite a dream.
That's really the basis of a lot of the spreadsheets that we have, and the CreOS, or creative operating system, we put into place, is to give business owners tools so that they can begin to put that practice within projects, within their roll up, within factors, within cash flow, and be able to see the results of those decisions, and then be able to remove themselves from it and see how this company behaves without their primary micromanaging role as a business owner, and be able to pass on that responsibility to others. Again, your goal is all responsibility and all the authority to someone else, but still make some kind of revenue on the other side.
Well, for folks that are interested, we should wrap up here because I just realized we're at our 31-minute mark. But Tim, we should encourage people to ask questions about these kinds of things in the Slack group, the 7 Ingredient Slack group, because this is all good stuff. I know there's probably a lot of like, yeah, but how do I and where do I start? So feel free to ping us there or stir up conversation with your peers. And I think, yeah, there's hopefully there are all of these things that are now bringing to light. What was the term you used, Tim? You said the virus has revealed.
Yeah, right. We've been working hard to not get exposure to the virus, or we're locked in quarantine to avoid exposure. But in reality, the virus has exposed things about us, the decisions we make, the areas that we're weak, and the problems that are about. So yeah, the viruses exposing us one way or another, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. Well, this has been a really fun journey doing these daily live streams with each and every one of you. And Tim, thank you for being here. We're going to try and drag Marcel back into this here sooner or later, and also have a couple other guests. And we'll also soon hopefully be giving everyone a sense of, okay, what's next? Like, where do we go from here? Because we certainly have a cool community of people here that we're trying to build and encourage and give you some resources to help you keep moving forward.
Yeah, as always, hit us up in the Slack channel, the 7 Ingredients Slack channel. You can direct message Joel, myself, any of our team members. We're here for you to help. We are posting these videos, so some of the information we're sharing, we share at a fast pace, but feel free to watch those videos, kind of recapture those conversations. Don't hold us too accountable. We are thinking on the fly, so sometimes we misstep and use the wrong words. So show us some grace too, but feel free to reach out there, resources. And Joel and I are still producing podcast episodes. So between all this, we do still capture each other and create some of those conversations as well. So tune into the podcast. There should be more coming up sooner than later with returning to the profiles of the creative entrepreneur. But the Rev Thoughts podcasts are coming soon as well.
Yeah, we promise to return to our regularly scheduled programming as soon as possible. All right. Well, Tim, thank you. Thanks for all the good comments from each of you today. We'll see you tomorrow, and please keep the conversation going. We look forward to answering questions and tackling another relevant topic in tomorrow's live stream. So have a great Wednesday. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you. See you tomorrow.